So we're just going to go over this quickly because I know you all participated through the citizen planner participation or training. So there is the Ohio Ethics Law, which is covered by the Ohio Revised Code Section 102. A guide for that is in your handbook. And there's also the Ethical Principles in Planning, which was released by the American Planning Association in 1992. It's just a statement to guide the ethical conduct of those who are making decisions in the planning process, such as Planning Commission. Again, that is in your handbook, and I'm not going to go into more details. The last two items were covered in that training that you went to earlier this year, commission ethics and individual ethics. Gary, do you want to touch any on this?
Yeah, I guess I'd like a few opening remarks first, but first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, but also attending our previous work session. We really appreciate it, and you have in front of you the resolution passed by council, and that's not just for the Planning Commission, but also for the Board of Zoning Appeals. They feel it's important that we get continuing education for our members. And it is a good question. They also pointed out that they didn't feel that the members should have to pay for that training. So that would be put into the budget. Council members recommended that. And we were very happy to see that. Also in your packet is one of the things that, and I think this kind of sets the foundation for why we're having this work session. And we want to be, I guess, as succinct tonight. So hopefully an hour or longer if you have questions. But as you know, we're going to embark on the new comprehensive plan. And that has been a major project that the city council has wanted to initiate. We've been fortunate that we have now put together pieces of funding, including $50,000 up to $50,000 from the Montgomery County Land Bank to go ahead and update our plan. The plan that we have here is the 2005 Comprehensive Land Use Plan. And I think the comments that have made about it being updated as well as the zoning code are appropriate and correct. And the time has come that we need to really update both. This is going to be a major project for the 2021 going into 2022. And I think some of the, and I'll read this paragraph since it's not up on the screen, but you have it in your document there, the project understanding. The team that we will be working with will guide this participation through our broad understanding of city planning and how to help communities continue to improve the quality of life for their residents. We bring a market responsive approach to our plans that, when combined with an understanding of a community's existing assets, helps to identify specific public projects and set the table to attract the desired private investment. This plan will provide actionable implementation steps to meet the community's unique and authentic vision developed during the process. One of the important things also to, and one of the reasons we're excited about this and we want to have these work sessions is we want to get everyone on the same page. And I think Mr. Hairston said it best at our last recap of our combined training or legal update with both the BZA and the council, that it helped him, particularly a new member, better understand the responsibilities, duties, and process, but it also kind of got all of us on the same page. And that's really our goal, because we'll be moving through this new planning process, which will be not only the foundation for the land use, but also when we go to move to making changes to the zoning code. And as it says here, it will be built through a robust community engagement process that gathers input from staff, elected officials, residents, stakeholders, civic groups, business community, and community organizations. And the reason I wanted to note that, particularly since we are going to be on YouTube, is we want the public to know that they're going to be engaged in process. And as members of the community development department, we feel it's our job as staff to begin to bring everyone together and to be that conduit and to be that facilitator of communication so that the BZA, the Planning Commission, the council, and the community, we're all working toward a common goal, and I think all of us agree it's to improve the quality of life here in the community. So with that said, thank you again for being here, and keep in mind we're here as a resource as well. So don't hesitate to call us as individuals if you need information or support. And I want to thank Naya for putting together this great resource booklet, the handbook that we have now. We're going to go through some of the things that were in the APA training that I think some of you participated, or maybe all of you participated in. And we encourage you at your leisure to feel free to revisit those sections and those videos. And if you ever have a question, particularly when it comes to ethics or ex parte communication, some of the things we're talking about, we can serve as a resource. And then we also have our legal counsel, our city legal counsel, that is more than happy to give advice. So don't feel like you're out there on your own if you have any questions. Thank you.
Gary,
Yes.
will the AICP, last time they did a comprehensive plan, they did these contacts and stuff too, but who's going to be giving them who to contact? Or are they going to just go into the community and randomly select? Because they also sit down with the boards and the commissions and that too, anyone that wanted to come in. Because I remember, I can't remember if I was on commission then, or if I came in as part of the JCs and just a community leader, but came in and sat down and answered a lot of questions, gave a lot of feedback, and then they sent me stuff to fill out as well. So I had more time to, think about it versus just on the spot.
Sure.
Is that going to be part of the process, or is that what you're looking at?
Well, there is going to be engagement, and I'm glad you asked that question because we just recently signed the contract. And so we're going to have a scoping meeting. And so staff will be meeting with them, and we'll get more detail on that. And then we'll communicate it back to the commission, probably to BZA, and make that. So they're going to lay out what that community engagement process is going to be. So it's a great question. We'll have more details forthcoming. We're going to try to set that meeting up with staff next week. It may be the week after. It'll probably be, this plan, I think, is anticipated for about a 9-month process. But I'm glad you asked that because we want people to know that that will be part of an important part of this process.
Well, last time it was nice to be able to get input, because they asked a lot of like, well, where did you see the city at, 10 years ago or whatever compared to now? What are some of the things you would like to see brought to your city?
Sure.
To give ideas on focuses and things like that, and a lot of other things. And they asked a lot about community things and that sort of thing so that they could try to make sure that the new process or the new plan kind of incorporates the old, but helps steer towards, growth and prosperity and that into the future. So I'm hoping that that's what we'll see this time too.
I think that's well said. And Lori Minnick, our economic development specialist, has said repeatedly and correctly, and in fact, it's actually in some of this statement, is about identifying that vision. What is the vision? And with that input, hopefully we come together on a consensus on what do we want to see in the future. And as you all know, sometimes that's one of the most challenging things is what is the vision, the future for Riverside?
Well, I think it's important for us, because we're residents, and that's one reason you have residents committees and commissions, but is that we reach out to some of those and some of the groups that are embedded in the community so deeply and trying to provide services and trying to do different things and get their opinions and that on, where we are, where they'd like to see us go and that sort of thing. So I'm just hopeful.
Very good. Thank you.
Madam Chair, are you ready to discuss the proposed or the draft bylaws? Okay. So in section 2 of the
I
handbook.
just have one question. on the
Yes.
Ethics still.
Oh,
There was
yes,
this ethics training included, the link on YouTube.
yes.
And this kind of ties into the bylaws later
Mhm.
on as it relates to training and such. I didn't see any reference in the information about the required continuous education training, about whether that had to be in-person training or that could be virtual training. What methods of training are acceptable for meeting that requirement?
As far as the resolution,
Yes.
yeah.
So, yes. So virtual or in person is both acceptable. Most of the webinars that the APA puts out are like their webinars, they're, they're on the web, but they also do have in-person opportunities as well. There's the Sinclair opportunity that happens every year, it's my understanding, and other organizations have in-person opportunities for training as well. And as they come up and they're made available, we'll let you know about both the virtual and the in-person ones.
So it's more about the documentation.
Yes, yes.
Of the training than it
Mhm.
is the format. of-
Yes.
of-
And that was brought up by council people as well, having that documentation.
And the documentation, if I'm just now.
So something like this ethics YouTube training would unlikely to be an acceptable training
There,
because it would be hard to document that you.
if you
participating.
intend in real time, they do send you a certification.
Okay.
So then what you were saying about how they're available afterwards, if somebody can't do it because it's in the middle of the day at work, then
Mhm.
they're not going to get credit for it.
That's
I
correct.
mean, all of your commissioners work during the day.
Most of those trainings start at 1, so I'm not sure when you take lunch, or there's, like I said, in person, we can make those arrangements. We let you know ahead of time. They send those schedules out at least a month or 2 ahead.
And we'll work with you on that
course we will.
documentation. Since this just got passed recently, we're
Yes.
still kind of developing how we're gonna, the guidelines and everything. So there'll be a lot of more information. But if you have any questions, just feel free to let us know.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't all just in person. So, most professional.
Right.
Yep.
Entities have gone to allowing virtual, and particularly in the times we live in, that, I think
Yes.
it would be, definitely appropriate to have that as an option as well.
I agree.
Now, does the MVRPC or the Sinclair offer anything? that
They
you know
do.
of?
Mhm, they do.
Sinclair normally does a 1 day, nothing but planning and development for the area. It's done by the regional,
Mhm.
which is pretty good, as long as you can get off and work.
Yeah. And there's other topics you can look into, environmental sustainability. You can look at housing, even transportation. If the RTA is offering some training, that all is related to what you do.
I take ethics, state ethics.
Mhm.
every
And that would
time,
count.
Every year practically.
So
Yes.
yeah, if there is a training that you're
sunshine
taking for your
law.
job that's, adjacent to what you're doing, we can work with you on that.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
It did.
Okay.
It did. Yeah, when I saw the ethics thing, I kind of jumped
Yeah,
ahead
it's
to that since we were on the ethics, but it's in the bylaws.
Well, I was hoping that they'd count what we did with this last one, but I wasn't able to get on at the time
Mhm.
because I had therapy and stuff, so I watched them later, so, that's, to me, that's gonna be the issue. Because like in my job, if I go to my job, I don't get lunch.
Mm.
I work straight through. There's no way I can spend even an hour in the office on a video. I'm on the floor too much,
Mhm.
so if I stay in the office for an hour, I'll have an inmate fight somewhere. So.
Yeah, council just wants to be able to give you the tools. And of course, we've had the legal updates so that we're legally in compliance, but also that continuing education. But we certainly don't want to make it overburdensome. So we as staff are going to work with each of you as far as your individual schedules and stuff. So because we strongly want to encourage it, but also support it. And that's why I don't think you were here yet, Jonathan, but anything that has a cost associated with it, such as
Yeah.
the previous training, the city will cover that cost. And I think that's obviously the right thing to do. If you're requiring people to do the training, at least pay for it. I've not had a chance to attend the St. Clair. I always wanted to go that, and I always had a scheduling conflict? Is that normally in January? Is that
I
where?
think so.
Normally like November.
November? Okay.
November. Yeah, it's November and they have, different workshops you can choose from throughout the day and you select your schedule as an individual. It's not very expensive. The city has paid for that in the past.
Good.
I've been able to get that at my job, but, not everybody has that same
Yeah,
opportunity.
and
I mean, it's
The
normally
other-
pretty decent. I mean, most of them.
The other thing for some of the members who might not have as direct access to training, I was wondering if, like when we had the law director's presentation in the work session, if an hour could be documented, on a certificate for the people who are present.
Sure.
Towards that requirement, that, was an expectation that everybody be here. And so maybe they could be given credit for that time, when those opportunities arise internally to provide training as well.
I think that's fair and that makes a lot of sense since that was an extra meeting and extra time spent and I thought it was worthwhile to kind of set the foundation at least. So yeah, that makes all the sense to me and I think staff would support that with council.
Okay. All right, so bylaws, do you want to start just going over article by article, or how would you like to do this, Maya?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I prefer if we could just go chronologically.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any issues with the name of the commission.
That's one we won't argue with.
The authorization from this,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can just,
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to-
Yep.
The citizens against.
Yeah, right.
You always say,
Yeah.
good citizens for, friends of. so
well,
and so.
let me
How about-
just say, on
any-
page 1, is there any issues?
Let me just interject. And of course, a lot of you are familiar with rules of council. Council's going through rules of council. BZA had some previous rules. When I served up in the small village of Hartford, we had adopted rules and it particularly helps new members if you don't have an orientation because it kind of condenses the responsibility, the role and everything. But I found that it is a good source document and as Naya has suggested that each year, those get adopted at the reorganization meeting and then any edits or additions or anything you want to change each year have that. And that's just been my experience of how it's been done with some like village or city councils. When I was at Brookville, we also did the same thing, finally adopted some rules of council. So we thought it would be a helpful document and tool for all of our boards and commissions. The ones from BZA, do you recall how old they are?
Those are from 2006.
They're from 2006, so we'll be working with them to update their rules as well.
No. I don't know it, but when I first got on planning commission, I was actually sent to like an ethics training. Ethics and like consent, like sunshine law and ethics. Are we doing that? 'Cause I don't know. if these three are doing
not. I know that, they've changed it a little bit now that they can, like, for example, a council can appoint a designee, which in this case, I think is the clerk of council. But I've been to that training and I highly support that. In fact, what you said, Tony, I think ethics training and when you talk ex parte or you talk conflict of interest, I think that's excellent training. Some of them are, I don't know, 2-3 hours. They can be whole days, but public
Some of them
records,
are dry, but-
yeah, they're dry. And, that is something, in fact, I've been to some of those presentations with, it's a paid speaker, but it's really worth it. And some of those are actually from either the Ohio Ethics Commission or some of the other Attorney General's office. And we could actually schedule something like that for a work session. And I would absolutely count that as a continuing education credit. So that might be, that way we could even schedule a night of a regular meeting and have that part, unless we had a lot of other cases. But I think ethics training, and of course, you've been through it, right, Tony, as
Yeah,
well?
We do it at the clerk's training and at Huber Heights, they bring in the Ohio Ethics Commission once a year for all staff to have the training. They'll do the training for free. They'll send someone to your community for free. So it maybe not even just for the board, but you know, if you opened it up to staff
I
or
was gonna say to
whatever,
the other
that's.
commissions that are gonna be
Just
under
like-
this.
Mhm.
The,
A
uh,
similar joint, we can get
Similar
that
to what
together.
we had with legal update.
And as you mentioned, the Ohio Sunshine Laws training, it would be a valuable training, particularly for a new member in terms of Open Meetings Act, public records and that sort of thing. I don't see that specifically referenced in the training subjects. But
Definitely be added.
it is a 3-hour training that they offer regionally through the Ohio Attorney General's office, and they do have a virtual module that you can do the training at your own pace and get a certificate for completing that training. And maybe we should consider adding that subject matter, as I do think it has a lot of validity and it's widely available. It's consistent throughout the state.
Would you all be pretty much agreeable? That'd be a great way to start, is with that training, and then
I think the
assign credit for
Sunshine Law
that.
is always a good one. It's always a good refresher. You know, I've sat through it probably at least 8 times in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
You know,
I do it every year.
yeah, I mean, I normally do too. We just didn't have in-person sessions last year, so they didn't put it on our agendas. But I think that, you know, that's something that's pretty standard, almost as a yearly update most of the time for most public or public commissions or entities. Because even on school board, we have to do that. So I think that would be good.
Great. Okay, I made that note.
The other thing I was gonna ask, but since we're on this training, is I went to a couple times with
Yes.
Tamara to some local things that were going on about regional stuff and learning. And they had some classes teaching you how to, you know, looking at different corridors, some things that were coming up, like some of the new ideas of like multi-use overlays and all that stuff. Would that be considered too? Because I mean, the last one I went to her with, I wish I could remember. I think it was a group that a bunch of the cities belong to, and I can't remember the name of it, but that was one of the most informational sessions I've ever sat through when it comes to planning commission stuff. And it was really good.
You want to comment on those kinds of things?
Oh, I mean, that happens all the time when right now, the Ohio APA conference is going to be virtual. There is what we call OPI. It's OKI, excuse me. Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana has a conference coming up. It was delayed because of COVID, but they're doing it this year. It's virtual, of course. So all those talk about those hot new trends that are happening in planning, where you're talking about mixed use. You're talking about the new trends in parking. So if you're interested in that, I will definitely share those.
Well, this one was actually just like Riverside and West Carrollton. It was more local
Oh, okay.
group. But I think we went to like 4 or 5 different sessions that day. And it was really good. And some good information, you know, and that, but I thought, wow, I wish council could hear this.
Yeah, you bring back a memory for me, and it's probably been last year, but and part of my continuing education, it was on Urban 3 does a lot of land use planning, and I guess their theme is how you maximize the return on investment on your land. That, you know, these big parking lots at malls and stuff now, you're seeing those parking lots redeveloped because there's a lot more return on investment to the community. So we had talked about it, and we had support among some council members. Now, there was a fee, and the presenter is renowned, very successful, but I think it was like an hour or 45 minutes, and he can do it virtually. and then have some questions and answers. But again, now you've got me thinking that would be a great joint session thing. And it really talks about really I guess, the philosophy or approach you ought to take as far as when you're, for us, redeveloping our city.
Well, and it helps us to me, it helped me go, okay, so, yeah, we have some standards for like, well, like, Kroger wanting the stucco look versus,
Mhm.
well, there's some design elements that either are cheaper or it's the new wave. And sometimes our UDOs are kind of from
Yep.
before this was the new, where it was all the streamline and everything, you can't just tell someone they can do brick anymore. It was like, this guy was really realistic about some of the stuff, and like, you gotta be somewhat flexible if you're wanting some of these bigger companies to come in. Because I remember an opportunity we lost many years ago just because the particular body that was hearing the case didn't like the look. And it could have jump-started Center a Flight in a heartbeat, but just because it didn't completely match, they said no at the time. So, and so I found that to be very interesting. And that, so if we could do, if you're sitting here telling me that with this training, that we're going to try to do some things to bring some things in-house as well, that makes me feel a little better about it than everyone having to try to take time off from work and stuff like that. Because I don't know what my schedule will be in the future, so I can't, say whether I can take time off.
Well, it makes a lot more practical sense, and I think it'll be more fun and entertaining when you have a group and you have a dynamic presentation. So we can work with the commission if, on suggestions and things, but I think this has been a good discussion on possibilities, so.
Well, and I think too, it'll give us, because I know when I go to other, like big group type things, some of them, when they're nice and small and regional, they're really good, but when it's like a whole state type thing, it's hard to ask your individual questions sometimes that really only pertain to your city, or you have something very specific in mind that you would like to get an opinion on, because they're a lot broader scope. So if we have those opportunities to bring some of that in, I mean, maybe it'd be good. We got a lot of new council members. We got some new commissioners. I mean, David Harold's been with us for a little while now, but they're still newer, haven't had an opportunity with COVID to attend very many things. So I think it would be nice for all of us, really. Thanks for setting my mind a little bit more at ease.
I did notice something back on page 1.
Okay, yeah.
And I hope you don't think I'm being picky about some of these things, but this is what I do.
Yeah.
It's my
No,
job.
right.
Is all this kind of stuff. So section 401,
Mhm.
on the second line, I think it should say to staggered 5-year terms. It seems like the word year is missing.
Thank you. I made
Yeah,
note.
5 terms would be kind of a long haul, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I'm getting close to that.
Nice catch.
So are we ready to move on to page 2?
Yeah, and on page 2, the section chair pro temp, it's numbered section 4.06, but I think it should be 4.04. Based on the prior number and the number after.
Got it.
And then I know there's probably some discussion amongst the commission members on under staff duties. I assume this second paragraph in section 406, where it talks about staff reports being provided to the commission at least 10 days before the meeting, is what we're really discussing there is the meeting packet.
Yes.
And so I think we should have some discussion about that, and we should call it probably what it is, because it's
You wanna call
sometimes
it the
more
packet?
than just staff reports. So I don't know if anybody else has any
Yeah.
feedback
I
on
mean,
that.
And I know that I've tried to discuss this before,
No.
but the virtual packet for me is just not feasible. I can't look at that much documentation online at one time. Whether if I'm at work, I'm not allowed to.
Right.
Okay,
Mhm.
and right now with my injury, I'm not supposed to have that much screen time.
Mhm.
Okay, and for us, and I know I normally tell Naya, and she's been real good about having a packet ready for me out in the lobby. But sometimes we're just not able, even though the lobby is most of the time unlocked. Sometimes Naya will get here, and I know for me, I've talked with a couple of the other commissioners. We just don't understand why it's such a big inconvenience to staff to drop those off to us like they had been done for years and years and years. It's 30 minutes to get to all of our homes.
I understand, but I'll be quite honest. We are absolutely slammed. I mean, we have and I'm just, I understand, I appreciate the comment. But for example, council passed a new program which we fully support. It's the foreclosure and vacant property ordinance. So we're registering, we're partnering with a private firm. 226, they have a list of 226 vacant properties. And we, the staff, meaning primarily our code enforcement officer, have to verify each and every one of those that they are in fact vacant. So we're very positive about these new programs, and I hate to say it, but a lot of this is not just staffing, but it's the budget. And as you know, we have an issue on the ballot this fall, which we hope passes, so that we can add additional staff to do that. And I respect Madam Chair's comments on that. We've had a lot of conversations with the city manager on this. And that was one thing that we felt we had to cut back on.
But you have commissioners printing their own packets at home because they can't get here. That's not fair to them.
Well,
Because
we're
we
more than
involve-
happy to provide, materials
Then
for
they
that.
get here.
Well, I meant as
and,
far as
you
if you need paper and ink, as far as those kinds of things, we
Wouldn't
thought
it be
that
more
was.
expensive than having this, one of the extra secretaries go out and take 30 minutes and deliver them?
Well, that's changed too. We have one full-time person. We have one part-time person, and we're adding another part-time person now. But as far as our staff, we still are down 20% from what it was back in 2018. There were five staff members at that time. We have 4, and I can tell you we're doing much more than we've ever done. So more than happy to talk about it with the city manager and see how he feels about it. And I'm not complaining about the workload, but I have to be quite frank about, and things, and I can tell you, and I with Kroger and all these other businesses come in, and we have numerous walk-ins, we have citizens, our permits are up, violations are over 900 for the year already. So I know it's an inconvenience, but we're doing the same with the BZA as far as picking up the packets.
Is mailing an option?
Oh, it's absolutely an option, but that's going to slow down. My concern there is that, are you going to get
Yeah,
them
the postal
timely?
services.
Well, it's been so
They're
unreliable.
doing well at that, but I mean, I was just suggesting that as another option.
Some things have taken 7, 8 days. Now, one of the adjustments we've done, and more than happy to talk about this, and I have talked about a lot, is because of the volume, is pushing out the deadline for when they have to have things here. So economic development wise, we like to push things through as quickly as possible and get them on the agenda, since we only meet once a month, same with the BZA. So we've tried to push that out. But when you get 5 BZA cases, sometimes 6, and a pretty robust schedule and agenda here with the planning commission, it's all good. I just wish we had more staff to that we could provide more services, not only to our boards and commissions, but to our council members and also to the community.
So in your opinion, there is no way that once a month, I think his name's Robert, could deliver 4 or 5 packets?
Well, my recommendation is that you send a request to the city manager and let the city manager make the decision. I'm not going to speak for the city manager, and I understand it, but this is part of the efficiency things that we've been trying to bring to the city. We did the same thing with city council, and you can talk to the clerk of council. She works for them, and I'll be honest, I was the one that when the COVID money came out, I pushed for the laptops. I pushed for getting the monitors
still
and
get
everything.
Printed copies every meeting.
They're not delivered. Well,
Yes,
Katie
they
does
are.
it. Katie does deliver them, right?
Yes,
Right.
she does.
And some of them take them electronically, and and I'll be honest, you are correct, and that's the push we've had, is to try to get them all on electronic. Happy to print one out here at City Hall. But that's some of the things we're trying to do to cut down on staff time. So I don't have a problem with people disagreeing with that, but my recommendation is then I think that needs to be addressed to city council and the city manager.
I personally don't mind the virtual packet. In fact, I prefer it, but not everybody's in that same circumstance.
You're correct.
So, yeah. So it might not even be 5 packets that would have to be delivered. It might be 3 or less. So,
I can do virtual as well.
so I think maybe if it could be just an option to be explored for the people that, don't have the same luxuries that some of us do in terms of that access.
Certainly willing to entertain that. And Madam Chair, I
Unfortunately, on the
appreciate,
council there too. We went to all electronic packets and it's just, it is more efficient. It is, not everybody likes it though.
No, I agree.
Especially with planning, when you get to like a plan or something that
Yeah, the maps
maybe
matter.
be harder to look at.
It's
on-
impossible for
on a
me to
screen,
even
so.
view on the screen.
I'd be more than happy to talk to Mr. Lohr about that.
Because I know Harold's mentioned he likes having the hard packet. I think both of us at work, it's easier on a break to, if we do get to move away from our normal surroundings, to flip through paper, because it doesn't look like you're doing something else on company time. And David has said that he's okay with looking at it, but he'd at least like to have the hard copy at his desk when he got here.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and the people who like hard packets, they let me know, and so I
always
provide
forget
them.
to do it until,
Yeah.
oh, darn, I forgot, I need to get a
Yeah.
hold of her.
So if
So-
you let me know, I do provide it, and I know you like it, so I just immediately provide yours.
So I
It'll
don't have to.
probably be easier for staff if they had just a standard directive for how, if someone's gonna pick up the packets, that you don't have to call each time and she
Yeah.
wouldn't have to wonder whether she's gonna hear from you.
Yeah,
or
I
not.
always-
Right.
Yeah, make an extra copy for someone. Usually I have it for someone to ask, either Mr. Harrison or Mr. Owens. So I have that extra hard copy for someone.
So we'll make that paragraph like more descriptive of a meeting packet than
Yes,
staff
so
report.
I'll leave the first sentence alone because it does include all application related information and then say packets for the rest.
Okay, sounds good.
Mhm. And we try to meet that 10-day deadline, but again, given some of the volume, some things come in late. I know Naya constantly sends out emails and phone calls to applicants, and now if they don't have it, I mean, there have been occasions, if they don't have a completed application, they get bumped to the next month. We hate to do that, but we've even talked about limiting the number of cases that can come forward, and I haven't made a decision yet, but we've considered the number of cases that can be on the docket either for the BZA or the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I think I talked with Maya about if she's like waiting for a final plan or some piece of paperwork from an applicant, to go ahead and put it on the agenda and get the packet out. And if it's only a couple pieces, email that as soon as she has it and then have it ready for us
Sure.
at our chair. You know what I'm saying? If it's just one or two little things, it's not so bad, to try to hurry up and digest what's at your table.
And I wish it's been like that recently, but it has not. There's been substantial items.
Right, well, and that's different than, you know what, that's on them for not having it done.
Yes,
So
and that's
if
why
it
it's
moved
been,
To the next meeting, that's
Yeah.
fine.
like I've had
um,
one applicant booted because they did not have a site plan.
Yeah.
I have nothing to show you.
But I know
I
there's
have
been a
nothing
couple
to do.
times you've been waiting for a sign off or you've been waiting for
Sure.
something
Yeah.
fairly minor. And I don't think that's a reason to necessarily bump them or even hold the packet up, I guess really is what, what we were talking about when she
Yeah.
asked me my thoughts on that, so.
Well, I think that like previously, Maya's done a good job of getting it out by the 10 days.
She's
even if
done
there's things-
better than most have done.
And she updates it as it changes, whereas
Yes.
before, it would be like, we wouldn't either get it within the 10 days, or we would show up and there was all kinds of things
would
here on
be-
the agenda that, we didn't even
It
know were
would be
gonna be on. the
delivered at
agenda.
midnight according to my camera on Friday night prior to the meeting or sometimes on Saturday night.
Yeah.
So.
So that's improved.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's
that-
after my work
that's
hours.
Much improved, much improved.
Yeah.
It set off my alarm camera too.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night, I'm like, who's on my porch at midnight?
Well, my dogs also, for some reason, they can hear that car pulled in the driveway. Oh, okay.
So I
All
know we,
right, so we're gonna kind of leave that. I mean, I'd still like to have a discussion with city manager over it because I think that
That's fine.
it's something that I understand how much you have coming in and all that, but I just think it's a pretty minor request in order for us to be as prepared as possible for the meeting.
You want me to go on this page?
Sure.
In section 407, I think orientation spelled wrong.
Mhm.
And then this is what we've kind of already discussed. I don't know if in paragraph A, we could make some reference to it being either in person or virtual training would be acceptable, just so that's clear to someone who's new to the organization. And then under the appropriate subjects, we also talked about adding Ohio sunshine laws and in-house types of trainings. That's all I had on that page.
Anything else on page 2? Okay, moving on to page 3.
At the top of page 3, that paragraph 3 that goes back to the training stuff. I just had a question about the language because it says shall, which in legal terms means they have to, versus may remove someone for that reason. If you look on section 508, paragraph D, there's a similar section where it talks about if someone violates this particular circumstance that they could be removed by council, but it says such absences may be the cause for removal by council. I think the language should be consistent in that I think there's a process spelled out in the charter for council's ability to remove board and commission members. And there's a due process in place to do that it shouldn't be prejudged by implying shall be removed for failure to meet that requirement. Council would be the final arbiter of that through the due process. So if it could be something similar to it is in the other one that,
Because there might be extenuating circumstances. They might have completed part of their training and then had an accident or injury and couldn't,
Yeah, there needs to be some latitude there,
Yeah, or, you know,
discretion.
especially the first 2 years getting started with it and trying to get into a routine and that, or like if when COVID hit real bad and everybody was scrambling on how they were going to start this stuff. So maybe it should be may versus shall.
okay, I've made
That
that
way-
note.
That leaves it up to the council for determination on whether they should actually be removed or given a chance to get made up, you know.
so yeah, I think it could just say something like such failure to complete the educational requirements or certification of educational activities may be the cause for removal by council. So if those sections are consistent. And 408, I think members is spelled incorrectly in the title.
Hey, Tony, you want to come and proof our ballot?
That's what I do all day long.
Man,
I know.
I'm gonna call you next time I need a document proof. This is excellent.
Yep.
And then the only other thing I have on this is just in section 502. It talks about chairperson. On the first page, it's the position is defined as chair.
Chair.
And I think the move is to get away from any gender specific language. So using chair consistently rather than chairperson throughout the document. I think there's some other places where it says chairperson would just be for consistency purposes.
I know earlier, Gary mentioned the annual organizational meeting. Would that be something, I saw it in the Huber Heights bylaws that you sent out, Tony.
I had that on,
Yep.
at the end of my thing, that was a section that I liked
Yeah.
in some of the other examples to have a
Mhm.
specific section on the annual organization.
Yeah, is that something you guys would be, or you, the commissioners be interested in adding to this section in meetings?
It just spells out, you elect the chair, you reaffirm the bylaws. and,
Right.
Yep.
Those
Yeah,
types of
set the
things, which is
calendar.
pretty standard process.
Yeah,
in
that's
Mhm.
what we
boards.
do anyways.
So it just spells it out. So
Yep.
I think all three of the other examples had some form of that.
They did.
In them, so
Um,
maybe just pick one that sounds good and combine a few together.
Yep. I'll send it.
Here's a place here, and I only bring this up because we had issue with this a while back prior to either one of you, but you know, you still get a little gun shy.
Which,
I'm trying to, it's about meetings being canceled. I wrote my note here, but I didn't put my arrow to where it was.
That's on the
Okay.
next page,
All right.
the top 506.
oh,
Well, in the-
cancellation?
Well, in the event there is no business to be considered by the commission or that a quorum cannot be present, the secretary shall advise members of rescheduling the meeting. And one of the, I guess, and you can tell me where this belongs, but it brought up my thought when I was reading it. We had issue before when there wouldn't necessarily be cases, although we still had things that we were working on, text, and
Right.
we were just, but there weren't cases. And so the particular staff member at the time that was assigned to us would just make the determination to cancel the meeting. And I think that what we have said over recent times is that we still want to keep working on that, all that other stuff.
Right, right,
So we don't want to cancel just because there's not a case necessarily.
right.
So I would just like to have some language that before a meeting is canceled, that there's a discussion, at least with the chair or the co-chair, before doing that.
Well, I agree. I mean, if you've got a regularly scheduled meeting, everyone plans for that.
Right.
There's always going to be something to discuss or talk about or work
We
on,
can
so.
work on stuff, especially now that this is this, I look at this binder as kind of a work in progress, getting through the UDO, getting through, all of the items we want. So I'm not saying that either one of you might do that, but if we're gonna have this as our, every time we have a new staff person, they come in and they read things differently.
Right.
So I'd like to be very precise with that, but
And if you
There's
have
at
some
least a
suggested
consult.
language, I am open to that. So
I'm sorry.
if you have some suggested language, any of the commissioners, please send that to me for this section. And I'm gonna make a note there that I'll be getting language from one of you. That is section 5.06.
Or you're talking about the end of 501.
Well, the 501, it says it as well.
Oh, it does?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, I see.
that's the reason I had my note there was because that was the first place I read it.
It's kind of in two places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see where it was.
Yep, I see it.
Special meeting, anything under special meetings?
Share, person to share.
I crossed all those out. I'll make those changes.
Work session.
So you can tell a lot of the communities that we had samples from used, very similar documents. So some of them were verbatim the same.
Executive session. I have more of a question there versus because I've always been told that there was no reason for a planning commission to have an executive session. I'd like to know, I'd like to have a list of what we're allowed to have an executive session on.
Well, you could go into any of the approved exceptions in the Ohio Open Meetings Act. Some examples that potentially might apply would be pending or imminent litigation is one, but the city attorney has to be present to go in for that reason. So we couldn't do that unless that person was. But they may have advance warning that there is, something that they want us to make aware before we consider and would want to advise us in executive session for that reason. So you could have that. The economic development exceptions could potentially, but that's more council, I think, more commonly.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I mean, I see a lot of the things for public, like the school board and that, we all have the same things for executive sessions pretty much. I mean,
Personnel matters.
personnel and all that. And I've never, and like I said, I was told once by legal counsel that there was really would be no reason that we would have a reason for.
I think there was one
We
time
asked.
since I've been on that we've gone into executive session. I think it was legal matters. Or
Yeah,
pending or imminent litigation.
It can happen. It's rare for planning, commission, but it can happen.
Well, like I said, not really a comment about the wording, just was curious.
Yeah.
After a previous conversation I had. And then 506,
Yeah.
just the whole
Mhm.
zoning administrator, like with the chairman, name dispenser,
Chair.
chair, chair.
Yep,
Uh,
every time I see it, I'm gonna cross it out.
Chairwoman. Chairwoman.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Madam.
So,
The thing I had on this next page was under the order of business, which is basically our agenda.
Mhm.
I didn't,
I added roll call in my notes.
like roll call, and then I think we usually have matters by commission, but we might just want to look at one of our agendas and make sure all the appropriate categories are consistent with what's
Okay.
listed here.
You can even put a sample clip in there.
Yeah, because the other cities
have
had,
Administrator prefer to have a section to bring up matters as well.
yeah, if you look in some of the other communities that we looked at, some of them have a pretty extensive list under that,
Mhm.
down to Pledge of Allegiance and all that kind of stuff, but I'm not suggesting it needs to be that complicated, but just to be thorough enough that includes all the things that we think might be included on our agendas. I don't even know if calling it an agenda over order of business makes people understand more what it is.
You want to call it agenda, you said, instead of order of business?
I mean, that's what it says at the top of.
Okay.
Our thing
I
is.
can
agenda.
make that change.
And I think there's on the limitation, because I'm one of these ones that once it's like put out here, people
Mhm.
think that this is the gospel when it's supposed to be a guide.
Yes.
People don't always understand bylaws are a guide, not we've never, I only know one real time.
The
since I've been
fire
on-
station.
Yes, my first meeting. That we ever, and we still didn't limit the number of people and that spoke. But this is kind of designed to help us. I mean, we already can do like we've done the 3 minutes per person, like
Mhm.
council. But this gets a little bit more detailed in saying, but it says, if I read it correctly, this is if we see there's like a huge turnout, we can then go back and say, this gives us the right to limit to 15 minutes. So that could be 3 minutes per person. This could be 2 minutes, or the, opposition and, has 15 minutes. You guys decide who's speaking, is that, I mean, that's there as an option,
Yes.
pretty much, not.
If you see you have a huge crowd and you're like, okay, we need to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to be heard, like we talked about earlier. You have that 15 minutes to make
Right.
sure, they can say their piece.
I'm not really a huge fan of the accumulated.
I
content.
really don't
keep
like
track of
that, but
accumulated-
it's, well, your clerk normally keeps
Well,
track of it, but
Well, and, in situations where I've seen this, it does get difficult because somebody, might be against part of it and for part of it. And
yeah, and the way
I-
this is laid out, it's like for, against, and then,
I hate to turn away if we get active people who want to speak. And in all my years on planning commission, that one meeting was the only time, and we had at least 100 people
and we still didn't
there.
call them off. and
Not
it's-
everybody spoke, but we were there for probably 3 hours or something.
We had to
but-
move out on council chambers into the fire department.
The bay of the
They had to
fire.
move all the equipment out of the bay. They pulled in every chair out of the building possible.
So I wouldn't be opposed to just taking the accumulated time out.
I just, it's not the way I like to run meetings, but, it's up to the majority, so I'm not a big fan of that.
Of what the limitation or,
Or do you have another suggestion?
Well, I think
Because
there should be a
I
time
mean-
limit on each individual.
right?
But
Okay,
grouping people together and saying, well, some of you aren't going to get to speak because there's only 15 minutes allotted to this side of the issue. And there's 20 people here. Well, who says that someone's comments are more valid than another person? That's-
I mean, like council, they do 3 minutes per person, not so many minutes per side.
Right, correct.
So if we could just put in here that, the applicant, I'm okay with the applicant having the time they need to present their case. Okay, under certain situations, the chair may limit persons speaking to 3 minutes per person. That's not
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
taking out the accumulated, taking out the opposition. And then that if need be, the applicant could have a rebuttal. And
you said take out just basically everything after limit persons to speak.
yeah, and then the applicant can have a rebuttal if they need to. I mean, most of the time, we're pretty laid back here. And we go ahead and if the applicant can answer the question when the person's at the podium, I don't have a problem with that. But I think this is here in case we have that 100+ people show
Sure,
up,
sure.
And I
Yeah.
would say my concern is when you have those large crowded, you kind of need to get some more order and structure.
Oh, yeah.
You really,
Well, there is a process for suspension of the rules.
There
At
is.
the end of this document. So a majority of the group could suspend that rule that allows everybody to speak for 3 minutes and impose some other type of rule
Right.
by a suspension, a vote to suspend the rules if it was an out of control situation.
Well, what if, could we? I don't see it happening often, but I did see it happen once, so, But then again, we were there, maybe 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours.
The worst was the heat.
Yeah, the heat was, because it was spring, but it was like the first hot day, wasn't it, or something like that?
And for the life of me, I can't even remember what that was.
It was a big UDO change, where we were changing zoning and
Oh,
everything.
yeah.
And people's zoning along different areas were changing from, I don't even know, like from residential to B2. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But would it be feasible that something that the commission would have the right to limit the number of people speaking?
well, not limit the number of people speaking because like everybody needs a chance to speak.
Well,
But I'm just
yeah,
saying
To
when
me, that's what it does with the current language you have here, is it limits how many are going to speak.
it limits their time. It's not like you can stand up and have a whole,
So what we're talking about with the 3 minutes per person would limit their time. It just
Yeah.
doesn't limit the number of people.
People,
who can
mhm.
speak. And like I said, you could suspend the rules
Mm.
if 3 of the commissioners chose to do so and impose
Yeah.
a temporary rule.
And I
if you
think for
have
the
one.
most part, the 3 minutes is going to be take care of most of our situations.
Yeah, I
Like,
think rather,
occasionally,
yeah.
like once every 10 years. You know, like when we go for a big UDO change. or something.
Well, and to your point, I see a lot of chairs sometimes actually advise the audience that if it's the same point you're making, could you requesting, everyone could still have an opportunity, but sometimes the chair can control that flow.
Mhm.
I had to preside over a big Walmart hearing with just a tremendous, crowd, but we did that. You're limited to so many minutes, and we told people, don't speak until you're recognized. And, you've been through it. You have to kind of corral them, but if the chair, I think most people are pretty reasonable. If you give them 3 minutes and say, you got the limit, and you time them, you don't let them run over.
Yeah,
But I think that's what we would do. If we had a large group, we would just time them, and if it's, we just advise them, they need to stay on topic and.
You're going to say the same thing.
yes.
We appreciate you only speaking with, additional information that's not our.
Exactly.
Or if you're here as a group, maybe you'll designate one person. to speak
Mhm,
for you.
exactly. And that's how that,
In the
15 years
interest of everyone's, time and wanting to, voice their opinions.
Right.
So I think we can do that with just the 3 minutes.
Very good.
And if we find we gotta change it, we can always change it later.
at the, organizational meeting.
That's right. Okay, anything else on that page? I think that much takes us. All right, starting with rules of order.
Yep.
Anything?
I had under section 508D absences. I think it should be absent from 3 regular meetings versus special meetings. Typically, that's normal in these types of things so that people have different motivations. There's been times I know of a situation where they were scheduling meetings that a person couldn't attend just to get them up to the number of missed meetings. But the fact that they were special meetings, that couldn't be used against them if they weren't available to attend the meeting. So
Yeah, because you kind of plan, like, even if I go in to my employer, I normally say I need Monday nights off,
Right.
or I need to be off by a certain time because I've got meetings throughout the month on Mondays and meetings throughout the month on Tuesdays.
That seems reasonable.
The other thing I had is a lot of organizations that I've been with, it also says unexcused meetings, not just meetings. Because there are times, but I think that if we do that, then there has to be a process of making sure that either the NIA's position or the chairman is notified ahead of time. Normally, there's a notification, unless it's an emergency, it's normally at least 24 hours prior to the meeting that it's notified that you're not going to be there if you want to be considered for an excuse.
there are some of that in some of these other ones.
Every organization I've ever belonged to.
Does the
has been-
charter, I didn't get a chance to look up the charter. Did anyone know if the charter for council or for boards and commission members speaks to that?
I'll have to double check.
I know like the Huber Heights charter, it's 3 consecutive regular meetings of council missed where you move towards removal.
Right.
Or a board or commission member, it's the same thing, 3 consecutive meetings.
And I've never liked it when it's.
And I don't think, I think consecutive's a bit much. I mean, you never get rid of anybody.
Well, this is
then,
what
so-
happened to me with a board I sat on. I had one member who would constantly miss 2 meetings, come to 1 and miss 2 more. So he never missed 3 consecutively.
Right.
And that was harder than all get out. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, exactly.
So I would like to see it be 3 excused. I mean, 3 unexcused, thank you. I'm getting tired.
3
Um,
unexcused regular meetings.
regular
we're almost done.
meetings, and then maybe we find some language about what, like, there has to be notification. It can't just be, no, well, nobody heard, so we have no idea. That should be unexcused at that point, Now, if it's an emergency, we find out later, we can always go back in the next meeting and excuse that person, because if they were in a, God forbid, but in a car accident or they weren't able to call, there are some, that's kind of, an odd situation, but most of the time, I think most of us try to let someone know if they're not going to be here. And a lot of times it's a whole month ahead of time, Tony. Him and his
Yeah,
travels.
I'm gonna be missing the next one.
Yeah. And he's already told me that, so, but you know, I think we have to spell it out, because otherwise people may think that they're gonna be excused no matter what,
Right.
and that's not the case.
So can
Shouldn't
we-
be the case.
Can we agree to 3 regular excuse?
Unexcused meetings before maybe.
Yes. And then have some guidelines for
Yes.
what constitutes an excuse.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, that was my question. Tony, do you have a experience? What actually qualifies as an excuse? Because that can kind of be a
Normally,
judgmental.
as long as they've given notice, you know,
Yeah, I'm on a board where we had that very argument about, in fact, I was affected by it because my dog died that day and I had to put my dog down, and I wasn't going to travel 3 hours across the state to go to a meeting right after this happened. And, you know, then it got into, well, some people thought that was an excused absence. And other people thought it wasn't, you know, it's your pet, not your child. So, I think it's more about the notification in advance. And, you know, we have to trust that the members are going to be straightforward
No,
unless
and-
it's a reoccurring problem.
And in all reality, I mean, we're not an employer. Somebody calls or sends a message even the day of and says, I've had a family emergency.
Right.
I don't think I'm gonna make it. That's,
That
you
should
know,
be sufficient.
that should be sufficient. The only thing I say, in most of the committees I've been on, it's been at least a 24 or 48-hour notice before meeting, missing a meeting for just like, oh, I forgot to let them know that I have to work, or my schedule changed that night, or I forgot I was gonna be out of town, or whatever the case may be. The only thing that concerns me is that we have an obligation, since we're on a Monday, we have an obligation to notify if we don't have a quorum, our applicants in that. So I guess the discussion for us would be, is 24 hours really enough time in order to do that notification? Or does it need to be at least prior to the end of business on a Thursday so that there's time to notify
I
the
think that's
applicant?
fair.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know we're not gonna always know, and there still could be an emergency that pops up even over the weekend. But I think if we set the expectation that we should be able to let either Naya or myself, or hopefully you email both of us, in case one of us is sick too, or something happens. But is like by the end of business day, Thursday, prior to the meeting, because that gives Naya an opportunity that if we're not going to have a quorum, number one, we can inform all of the other commissioners, but we can also inform the applicants that we have to push this to the next month.
I'm fine with it. And if someone abuses, you know, missing meetings, the commission always has the ability to not excuse their absence.
Right.
If
If it
it's a
becomes
recurring
consistent.
pattern or whatever.
And we've been fortunate that we haven't,
Yeah. I mean,
seldom have we had that lack of quorum. So
Right.
that's the
Very
encouraging.
rarely have we had the lack of quorum anyways. And most of the time, everybody lets lets us know that they're not going to be here, but just if we're going to do this and put it down,
agree.
This is a guide. I mean, we can still have current best practice for our board and just have that written as well. Say, well, this is the best practice that we use. This is the rule, but this is the best practice that we use to excuse an absence or not excuse
Right.
an absence.
That's true.
Yeah. So yeah, working at an institution of higher education. Best practices are my friend because things change so fast. You'd be like,
Yeah.
listen, that was last year's best practice. This year.
That's
You
right.
probably hear a lot of excuses too.
Yeah, we're like, well, the Constitution said, like, best practice right now. This is best practice.
And I think we're all very considerate about, people's work and different stuff, and we know stuff comes up, so.
I'm still trying to get used to it. 'Cause for the first 2 meetings, I still had BZ8 in my mind.
Yeah, because you were, yeah.
And so I If one of them I missed and I'm like, I totally forgot about it.
Well, see, I'm lucky in the fact that this meeting and my school board meetings are on Monday nights and all of my JC meetings are on Tuesdays. So Mondays and Tuesdays, I know are a meeting night. Don't
Oh, that's
schedule
great.
anything, don't plan to be out of town.
There is one chairperson in that section too.
Yes, I've crossed that out.
I was gonna say,
As I see it, I cross it out.
Just do a fine.
Probably just have to do a
Yep.
search and find.
Yep, yep.
Replace.
Anything else?
On that page.
And I'll put
Almost
page
done.
numbers on here too.
Okay. That'd be nice. Okay, moving on to the next page at the top, it says from the applicant. So
There's a chairperson in section 605-1. That same section, paragraph 3. It says by the city zoning administrator. Everywhere else, it just says zoning administrator. So I thought the word city could come out, and then there's just the word such at the end that was hanging there.
Right. City
Oh,
just said
yeah,
zoning
I see.
inspector. I don't know if there was some other after such or.
I took such out too. Yeah.
That's what those are saying.
so that just. I'm all for-
Yeah,
What was interesting to me when I came to this revocation of approval, something I've actually been thinking about an applicant that seeing no movement on the property. Of course, this particular was a zoning issue. So my question is in this here, it says conditional use site plan and final plat approvals for non-compliance with listed requirements. So I'm assuming that would be like the case we had where we gave some conditions of approval based on certain hedges, fencing, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
instead of it going on for a few years. At the end of 12 months, it could have been brought back to us and we could have
Mhm.
revoked it. Revoked the approval.
And I
Right.
think Gary knows what we're talking about. And
Yep.
I think the
Yeah.
city tried their best to make an accommodation with that business.
Yeah, we really tried. but
And even still today, there's still issues with the water when it rains.
Yeah.
We actually, believe it or not, I believe, I do know what you're referencing, and we actually talked about that today in our staff meeting. So, well, it was actually brought up by code enforcement. We said, so what are we going to do? And I think they've met some of the conditions, if I'm correct, but not all of them. Yeah, well, then I know I'm on the right track because that's what, and I didn't realize when that, because I hadn't been by there, but that's one definitely that we have to follow up on. So does that come back to the planning commission to be revoked, or does it automatically, if they don't meet the conditions, then they're
Well, that was
conditional
another-
use?
That was another question I wrote down because I always thought that they had 12 months and then after that, they had to come back for approval. So I was a little confused by some of the wording there that it said it came back to the planning commission may vote to revoke an approval during a public hearing and was advertised at least 10 days prior. When commission revokes an approval under this section, the owner and applicant shall be notified of the revocation and shall have 10 days in which to request an appeal before the Board of Zoning Appeals. If no appeal is requested, the revocation shall become final on the 11th day after the initial action by the commission. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a confusing little section
Yeah,
there.
I'm thinking, hold on, we, the planning commission, are the ones who were revoking it. Yet why would the Board of Zoning Appeals?
because they can appeal planning commission actions.
Well, yeah, because there always should be someone that can appeal and it shouldn't be the same board. That would make sense, I guess. I didn't look at
Is
it
this
that way.
consistent?
This is a
with
check
the-
and a balance.
We don't have anything. So
So-
I did send this to Jim though.
Is
Jim
it
has
that,
seen it.
can staff revoke
Well, that's a
No, we
question we're
cannot.
talking about.
For
I mean, I can revoke.
or planning commission, or is it only planning commission has the ability to do the revocation.
Because in the past, it's always been the staff that's revoked it, saying they had to come back for approval if it went over 12 days and that. So I'm just looking for clarification, because, you
Yeah,
know, based, in like I said, we've had a rough time with.
Well, we do want to
we
get,
have-
you're right, we want to
yes.
get this.
and that's why
clarified.
I sent it to our legal, it's like, is this okay? And nothing came back, but we can send it again for
Well, and what
clarification.
I have a
And-
further question,
okay.
going one step further, is we sometimes approve or, how should I just put this? We advise or suggest to council rezoning.
Mhm.
But if someone hasn't moved on a property that we have rezoned, let's say we take, you know, a B2 that's precious commodity
Right.
in this community and we've made it an I1, but they're not moving on it, do we have the right to make a recommendation to council to revoke that zoning?
That is a great legal question.
I would love to know, because I am afraid that we are edging up on something like that,
I don't think we are.
you know?
No.
You
I know that question's
you
been
saw
asked.
Sale sign went back up.
I think that question's been asked, but I don't believe so.
Or sale
so-
sign went back up.
What was the question again? Though? Are we able to revoke what?
Okay, so when we
Are we able to?
recommend
Yeah,
to
I'm listening.
council to rezone something, we only recommend.
Right.
Council has final decision. Can we recommend for them to revoke that zoning if that new developer has not taken action on that site?
I would, if you can recommend rezoning, you can recommend.
But they've made the decision, the official map has already been amended.
Well, what I'm saying is you can if you're making a recommendation isn't a stamp. Just from me sitting in the few meetings I've sat in,
Right.
recommendation is all it is recommendation per that commission's point of view to say, hey, we recommend that you take a look at this and this is the reason why. At that point, that falls in the zoning hands and.
Well, this says though that
Well,
the planning commission has the power to revoke. It
Yeah,
doesn't
and
say
I
as a
just wanna make-
recommendation.
and so when we just notify them that their approval has expired, but we're not actually taking that approval away from them. Because you're the ones who approved it, not staff.
Mhm.
We're just notifying that it's expired. So this process would formally take that approval away from them. So
Right.
that's the clarification.
Right,
So-
and I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
that. I actually like that, okay? Because we have had people abuse, you know, and although I think everybody up here always wants to work with an investor, you know, and try to make things work for them. It's not that you want to revoke anything, but we've had a couple of situations where, you know, we probably should have.
I have a question, and I don't know, everybody else's bills and things work when they don't do what they say in a certain amount of time. Instead of it just expiring, why don't we make it an automatic revoke after 12? If we've given them a certain
That'll-
period of time,
That would have to require a change in the UDL. And there is a
right?
option to ask for
Okay.
extensions, but they have to communicate with staff. And there's,
Yeah, no, the extension piece, I'm fine with.
yeah,
But
that's
if-
already in the
if
UDL.
there's a standard amount of time to make whatever you gotta
Yeah.
do, make it happen, we should look at the UDO and see if making it a automatic, because I just see that benefit in the city. One, people will get things done faster, and then if they don't, they gotta go through that whole process over again, and that gives, if there's been
Yeah.
something where it's like, oh, well, we've made this now, so now you missed out, you should have did it first go round, instead of holding a whole public meeting, getting noticed, doing all that after it's already expired, which clearly if it's already expired,
Yeah.
you didn't do what you needed to do. at that
I would
point.
say this is similar to an appeal in the process, like we would hold it on a regular meeting if we know it's coming up. And we advertise it with another or other
Yeah,
cases.
yeah, I
So it wouldn't be
understand.
like extra meeting,
Oh, no, I do it
not
when
a
extra,
special meeting.
but I just think it's crazy that something expired. Like if my driver's license is expired, and I'm caught driving, what
You
happens?
get a ticket.
Well, you get a hearing, but it's not the kind you want, right?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and there's no way unless I, somehow had a license pending, there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah, and
Like,
I
missed my time to get my license and that's all she wrote.
I just speaking, this is coming from a little bit from my previous position, and we've had this issue, and there was a bit of a due process.
Mhm.
And this is kind of something that I'm bringing to you as an option.
Right.
Because,
Recommendation.
yes, a recommendation. Thank you.
Possible best
Well, this
practice.
doesn't
Possible
say
best
on rezonings either.
Well, I did not include rezonings
Yeah,
because like,
those are
like you
approved by
said,
council.
like,
It
mhm.
it is, I just didn't know if, if we could,
And I made a note to ask.
yeah, it just brought up an ask.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
just an ask. It's,
Well,
Well,
we have an
basic-
active case that you heard the reapplication for a conditional because it expired.
yes.
And so,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
those,
these-
Turn that thing.
These would be the things that the planning commission would be the final say on.
Yes, that is correct.
So it wouldn't affect, council wouldn't have acted on these
Mhm.
after or
Right.
planning commission made the
No,
determination.
and we do have the right to, I know that we have the right to recommend like rezoning. You have areas, so I guess if something happened, we could just recommend that this
Rezoning.
area to be rezoned. I mean, we've done that. With just a public hearing that we're gonna recommend rezoning and, because, and I know, and then Gary has mentioned to me before, this community is so tight on this B2. And that's really like where some bread and butter could come from. And, we did just take a big parcel and turn it into I-1 and, it seems like there'd be more going on there, but anyways, if we just look at that, maybe that's just something to look at and get legal director's opinion and then we can go from there on what we wanted to say. Anything else on that page? Okay,
Last page.
last page. Anything?
I don't have any changes on the last page.
Okay.
But I made a couple notes of some items I saw in the other bylaws that would be maybe some items to consider. I know that there is a brief sentence about ethics in this draft, but a lot of them went into more detail about the conduct of the members. So I didn't know if we wanted to expand on that. And then the other one, there was, in a lot of the other ones, there was sections on kind of like order or decorum, both for the members and for the public in attendance. And, where things would cross the line as far as appropriate behavior in those meetings. And I thought maybe we'd want to consider some language around those issues to be included as well.
I think that's very helpful. I know communities have had to do that because of the raucous meetings and so they finally had a disclaimer on the agendas that, if you didn't comport during the meetings, you'd be asked to leave. But I think some general guidance like that would be very helpful.
Like if you had a meeting like
You had one of those crazy meetings where there's a ton of people here and a few
Mhm.
hotheads get out of line or whatever, then
the right to-
you have the right to have them removed from the meeting. And on the same token, if commissioners were extremely out of line and how they were acting in the conduct of the meeting, then there is some parameters for that. as well. Yeah, so I think we could just pull some of the language from one of the other ones that would be suitable. I think most of them had that, both those elements in there. That's all I have then.
Anyone have anything else? I think we've given her a lot to start with, so if we can review it again. There's a lot of red marks on it. Or pink or whatever that is.
Yeah, you're right. You saw it. I'm marking it up.
So you'll kind of redo some of that and then we'll have another sit down and go over some of that.
But it did help to have a document to work from, to make suggestions and
Mhm.
starting from scratch. So I appreciate
Yeah.
your effort in that regard.
Well, I'm very pleased with all the input, sincerely. I mean, I thought this was a great working. We've got a lot of things we can clean up on this, and particularly that last one we talked about getting some clarification on what the options are, and of course, it might even be the catalyst for some UDO changes as well. So, thank you.
I just want to make, I mean, I want more business, but we need them to come in and do what they say they're gonna do and get it done, you know?
We have, I mean, I'm glad anytime council or, a commission member or anyone notifies us of a problem or anything, or are they doing what they should be doing? So, and we do follow up on that. I do make those phone calls on things that we're supposed to develop. What's the timetable? How quickly it's gonna happen? We had a few come up in council recently, and we followed up on those actually last week and this week. So, we don't see everything out there, so it's good to know. And as you said, be ahead of the game before there's a problem. So don't hesitate to give us a heads up if you see something now.
Glad to see the fencing around the Circle K lot.
Right.
And I've seen they're getting close to start. Oh, is there? Okay. And do we know about the corner of Linden and Woodman? Is that still gonna happen? That was a pre-COVID thing. It might have been.
Yeah, well, that question came up earlier and they had no plans to schedule anything for this year, and we don't think so for next year. So I know that came up.
Go back through the approval process.
Well, that came up at council. That's when I first came here. That project was, going forward, and then all of a sudden, shortly thereafter, everything hit, so it got shut down. But Lori did follow it. Lori Minnick followed up on that. They said they didn't have anything because of their, small footprint and everything, it really devastated them.
A lot of theirs aren't even open 24 hours anymore.
But I can't staff them for long.
Yeah.
I was there a week or so ago, and they're not even open 24 hours because they can't staff. And
I
they're
know,
only
it's insane.
seating limited people.
And we are following up on some of those enforcement cases. And as you well know, some of those, it has been a long, protracted legal, and that adds cost to the city as well. But it's what we have to do. I mean, people can't just be out of compliance and open up. And unfortunately, I'm surprised that the number that do open up, they don't get the building permit, and all of them are advised when they get the zoning that you still have to get the building permit. So it's still amazing that, but some just move in and start up, and
That's a job of enforcement after that.
Is there a checklist for these business owners, of what they need to move into a place? Is there someplace? that we-
We're
I've got a
actually,
checklist of what I have to do to accept a petition.
we are actually working on that.
Okay.
Yep.
let me just say, Nia brought that up, and this is one of the positive things about our staff meetings and collaborating. Another one is business registration, once you come in. So Nia's been working on that. Lori's been working with her as far as updating that business registration so that the tax department, they know who to report to. And of course, we've changed the collection company or organization recently. So that integration, and it's a great point, that checklist, if you're going to do business here are all the things. One of the biggest things that confuses people though, is since we don't have a building department, they get the zoning occupancy permit, but then they don't realize you still have to go to Montgomery County Building. And we work pretty closely with them as well. They'll give us a heads up. Sometimes they contact the fire department on a plan. And of course, the fire department says, well, do they have a zoning permit? So and we do the best, but I think if we can get more of that on the website, don't forget like the
And our zoning
checklist.
permit says the
Right.
building department's number at the county.
So
I
those are
think
the.
it is key. The website is gonna be our key for a lot for the future. When
Absolutely.
people are looking at where they can put their business and what the opportunities are, the easier it is to make one click and find out what they have. I mean, even on school board, I was just at a meeting where we were preaching, don't put this for parents. We have this great new tool for parents. Don't put it at the back of the website that they have to click 5 things to get to.
That's correct.
I want it on the front page. And anything to develop this community should be on the front page of that website with one click to get to all the forms, all the, whatever it is they need. And Naya's picture and name and phone number and everything should be right there. So if they want to pick up a phone, it's automatic.
Yeah, and we've been, I guess, positively critical of our website. It's, even when it says city code, well, is that the zoning code? And people go, what's a UDO? Well, it's the zoning code, but Nye's been working on that and with staff, and it's a ways to go because we had multiple emails. And so now we have the phone number, the email for all of our staff. So you can go directly to them. And if they call in and leave a message on our voicemail, it also goes to our email. But you're right, it's that making that more efficient, easier to get there, easier to connect, and then one-stop shopping.
Yeah, I think that will make your lives easier too.
Absolutely.
All right, so you're at 8 o'clock. I know you said you wanted to try to keep it at an hour. We're already at an hour and a half.
We're good.
'Cause I think-
All I'm gonna say about the standards of approval, we hounded it at the legal update. We're just gonna bring it up again because it helps us keep our reviews and our decisions fair and consistent for all the applicants that come through. That's all I'm gonna say on that.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought maybe it was more than that.
That's
what I
it.
was asking
I thought you
about
maybe
timing.
had more questions.
That's it. It's in your handbooks. You don't need to
All
remember that.
right. The only thing I say is I kind of updated a little bit, kind of was changing things around on this list of possible action items that we've been throwing around, kind of putting just some different, like first draft goals, second draft goals, commission public, just so we can set goals. I think it's important to have like goals when, after you assign something, when do you expect to see like a first draft of something or, that sort of thing. And it may be that we take time at a meeting, somebody has some wording they want to go over, we can have maybe something where we can do that when we're just discussing, what we want to see in it. But, so these are things, I don't know when we want to start assigning these. Some of them I know are kind of important to try to get to. I would say that, we're already working on the bylaws, so that's already in process. I know the fences is kind of a hot topic right now. I think we should probably try to look at that as soon as possible from what I'm scuttle that I'm hearing. Sign standards has always been a big thing, and businesses are always coming and asking for variances and asking for, exceptions. So I think it shows that it's something that needs to be looked at. So I don't know. What do you want to do? Do you want to try to assign any of this now? You want to wait until the meeting and do it under matters of commission? You guys look at this a little closer, see what you might be interested in.
I think if we're gonna be providing direction to staff, we probably should do it in a regular meeting rather than a work session.
Okay. All right. So if everyone will look over this and see if there's a couple of things that you might be interested in doing the legwork as far as researching and stuff. And then at the next meeting, we'll try to assign, if we can put that down the bottom of the agenda, we'll try to assign some of those so we can at least start getting the research done and start looking into it and have a discussion. And if you have any suggestions for, like I said, it's a working document right now, but it's at least something to try to keep some sort of order.
Can we add the accessory structures section on here? I know Gary and I have been talking about it. We had some,
You didn't send it to me, did you?
no, this
Oh,
this
okay. I was gonna say,
kind of
I-
came up yesterday
okay, 'cause
during
I went
the
through my
BZA.
Email and
Yeah.
like Naya Holt and went through
Yeah.
and scanned again to make sure I didn't miss anything.
There was a lack of clarity on one of the sections, like something being architecturally consistent and
Accessory structure.
section, just looking at that whole section. I know we just did porches and decks, but there's some other stuff. in here. Something I inherited.
You inherited a lot.
You're telling me.
We all noticed that.
I'm learning a lot and having fun.
All
You
right.
gotta define your version of fun.
Yeah, we gotta show you a fun.
Oh, just like SpongeBob does.
Okay. All right, so I guess we're at matters by commissioners. Mr. Rogers,
Nothing further.
Mr. Hairston,
Nothing.
Mr. Owens,
Nothing at this time?
Mr. Valquez.
Nothing at this time.
All right. Would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Such
Oh, do we
motion.
actually do that?
Oh, we had a.
We opened it
Yep.
up, yeah.
All right. I didn't know if we could do that. We have a motion by Mr. Owens,
Second.
second by Mr. Rogers. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Thank you for your time.